Olafin Jonathan Lawrence. Played through for Fuller. Fuller's beaten Larson here. And Ricardo Fuller scored for Stoke. 10 minutes to go. And it could yet be a celebratory night in the Potteries.
Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the Wizards of Drivel podcast. As Stoke start life back at the Bet365 stadium, it's Man City who hit the jackpot in a 4-1 win. We'll analyse where it all went wrong and try to find the positives from Pep's first visit to the Potteries. We'll also be looking ahead to 2 away games in a week, with Stoke facing Stevenage and Everton as we search for our first win of the season. There's no Chris or Jason this week, but making his second consecutive start from the left back in the studio podcast is Ben Cartwright.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
And it's a welcome, no problem. And it's a welcome back to the podcast for Bear Pit TV blogger Tom Thrower. Okay. Stoke City 1, Man City 4. Doubles for Aguero and Nolito either side of a Bojan penalty. Ben, we'll start with you. What are your immediate thoughts the day after the game?
Well, disappointing. Obviously, the result is always disappointing to have a loss, but especially when, well, obviously 4-1 completely flattered Man City. There was no that game was not a 4-1. It didn't feel like a 4-1, and Nolito's probably got the 2 easiest goals he's ever going to score. I said at the time, if it finishes 2-1 or 3-1 even, it would have been fine. Man City are a great side. It's probably one of the toughest games we're going to have all season tactically. We didn't really know how they were going to play. We haven't really seen enough of them, and also Pep has got multiple tricks up his sleeve. I think my main emotion immediately afterwards was just disappointment that it ended 4-1 and the way it ended, really.
Tom, how about you? Did you think the result flattered Man City?
Definitely agree. Yeah, I think if you look at outside of the 4 chances that Man City have had and scored from, there wasn't much else that Shea Gibbons had to do on that day. And I feel their final 2 goals, the 2 for Nolito, have come from the tiredness that playing against the Pep Guardiola team brings with it. And we'd worked so hard to try and get that second goal to equalise the scores. And you could just see sort of from the first one with Shawcross and Whelan, who stop as Iheanacho's running through on goal and almost just accept that another goal's coming. I think the team was just totally exhausted, and 2-1 definitely flattered Man City.
Well, there's been a lot of criticism online, as you might expect after a 4-1 home defeat. The defence has come in for quite a lot of the criticism, probably given the nature of the scoreline. How did you rate our performance on the whole defensively yesterday?
I think, well, I said it last week on the podcast as well, but I don't think no one was amazing in that defence. I think Bardsley played a lot better at right back this week. He was up against Sterling, but I thought he dealt with him quite well, to be honest. Obviously, Sterling he's coming back to his best, the sort of best football that we know he is capable of. So the fact that Bardsley was able to control him, I thought that's commendable. Shawcross he just looks so slow. He looks like he hasn't had a proper pre-season. I don't know how much he's been sort of on the sidelines with a back problem, like not training with the actual squad, doing the fitness work. I don't know if that's a thing, maybe. He just looks off the pace, as you mentioned, Tom, with that goal, and he just stood still. I know it's at the end of the game, and we were chasing it for large amounts to 90 minutes, but he does look off the pace, and that's causing him to struggle. But then, just a quick, maybe a positive of Eric Peters. I know he's getting a lot of stick at the moment, but he actually got a good cross in yesterday, which is the first time in a while. The cross before Allen's penalty that never was a good cross. So there's a positive to take from Eric Peters' performance. And just quickly on Woolshide as well. He played all right, but he wasn't amazing. I think he's getting a bit too much praise. I like him, but it's like we've got Franz Beckenbauer at the back. He was all right, nothing amazing.
I think looking at the Man City attack and just that abundance of quality, the fact that prior to sort of getting towards the end of the match, we'd managed to stop Aguero scoring from open play. And at times he looked dangerous, but it wasn't anything too worrying. He just scored from the penalty and that free kick, which we just can't defend set pieces, which is the main concern from the defence from me. It's been a problem right throughout Hughes's management at the helm of the club, and we just totally look clueless at defending set pieces, and it is normally the first opposition player is the player who will score the goal. The ball will be whipped over Whelan's head, and it. But apart from that, I wasn't too disappointed with the defence.
Well, who for you rather, were the standout players then for us? Who kind of impressed you as much as anyone can impress in a game like that?
I know that Tom wants to say a lot about Alan, so I won't sort of tread on his toes almost. But as I mentioned, I think Bardsley played well. Given is a fine number 2. I think he's perfect at the moment. Obviously, he's getting old, so I mean, has he got one season left in him? Maybe. But as a number 2, he's fine. Obviously, he didn't have an amazing game. 4 goals let in, but I guess there wasn't really too much on first looks or few looks that Given could have done better. So, yeah, I don't think outside of Alan there were really anyone that sort of was amazing yesterday. But yeah, you go ahead with your sort of Alan love, Tom, that I know you're very excited to do.
Yeah, I'm label it as a Joe Allen-gasm. So he was statistically easily probably the best player on the pitch, definitely for Stoke, and maybe better than some of the Man City players. He had 5 interceptions with nobody else getting anywhere near that. He attempted 6 take-ons and 3 were successful, and it was only bettered by Arnie, who got 4. He made 4 successful tackles, which is the most in the game, and then he completed one of the more shocking ones was he won 3 out of the 4 headers he attempted. And for a man who's 5'6", it was just almost, if you forget the scoreline, it was the perfect debut. He was all over the park. He was, I think everyone's mentioned the corner he takes, and then he charges back down the line 70 yards to kill the Man City counter-attack dead. It was almost similar to when I remembered watching sort of some of the clips of Imbula and then seeing him in that Bournemouth game and just thinking, this is absolutely perfect. This is the footballer we've needed. It's the same again with Joe Allen now. I think it's just absolutely perfect.
I don't think many people knew what kind of centre mid Allen was, but he's a centre mid. He's an old-fashioned centre mid that can do everything well. Or like, I don't want to jump the gun too much. This is his first game, and he had a good game. But on the face of it, from yesterday's performance, when he signed, everyone was like, is he a holding midfielder? Is he a box-to-box midfielder? Or is he sort of like behind the striker? He can do everything. I'm in love with the man. He's going to be fantastic for us this season. I'm so excited for Joe Allen, and he just proved, I think, everyone's sort of hopes right. He was fantastic yesterday.
And also, I think our corners just look better when he takes them as well. I mean, we didn't score directly from a corner, but the delivery seemed to be just a lot more consistent than Bojan or Shaqiri's corners have been as well. So if we can, harness that a bit, who knows? We might be able to score more than 1 goal from a corner this season.
Well, yeah, Shawcross back in the day was scoring headers from corners all the time. Let's get Joe Allen and Shawcross. Let's get them together, get some corners scored.
Speaking of set pieces, Mike Dean was at the centre of some controversy, I think it's fair to say. Mark Hughes, in his post-match comments, said he believed Mike Dean is a high-profile ref and maybe he enjoys having some of that attention. I think we'll need to sort of break down these decisions one by one. First of all, the first penalty of the game, the Man City penalty. Ben, what were your thoughts on that?
It's just so infuriating that it happens to Stoke. I think I would suggest that a lot of people have the same view, that if that's going to be the way, then it needs to be the way every single corner. And that one, it's just so harsh, just out of the blue. I guess the players have apparently been told not to do it, but then I'm sure they've been told many seasons where, like, right, this is a season where we really step down on it and you're not going to be able to hold anyone anymore. So it is, I guess, naive from Shawcross, but from my stance, it's just infuriating that it happens to us. Obviously happened with Ashley Williams last season, I think, against Swansea, and that was the only time it ever happened. So if we continue to see it through the season, fair play, but it just seems so harsh when you see it every week for every team.
Yeah, certainly. The talk that was on the terraces and at half time was mainly, why has Shawcross done it? He knows that the refs are watching him and all centre-backs, but specifically Ryan Shawcross for things like that. And he's given him the excuse, and it's a ball that that Otamendi's not really even going to be able to put much on. I mean, if Otamendi scores a header from there, it's one of the greatest headers you're ever going to see, and Shawcross is just dragging him down. And then the second part was, well, we want to see consistency. If they're going to do it, let's be consistent. And fair play to Mike Dean, he penalised Sterling for the second one.
Yeah, the second one was probably more controversial than the first penalty. The penalty we won, Sterling has his hands on Shawcross, but sort of no more than that. He's kind of like just kind of stroking his chest, which is a bit weird. Ben, I think I've seen you on Twitter just highlight something that came in the wake of that penalty decision where Shawcross is having a word with Mike Dean. Now, we can't really tell what he's saying, but it appears to be that Shawcross is disagreeing with a penalty decision that he's benefited from.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. It does look like he said to the ref that, look, Mike, you've got this one wrong. Sterling has literally put his hand on my chest, as you say, stroking me. That wasn't a penalty. Because as he's walking off, he sort of throws his hands up, say, what is going on? How can we be giving penalties for little things like that? And I don't know where I stand on it. Like, half of me is like, it's lovely that Shawcross is being lovely and sporting or whatever, but the other half of me is like, we needed that penalty. If Mike Dean then turns around and is like, actually, Ryan, you've got a point, that wasn't a penalty maybe, then we don't get a penalty. I don't know where I stand on it. Maybe my morals are being questioned on this issue, but yeah, fair play to Ryan, I guess, if that is what he's saying.
I think from Mike Dean's vivid gesticulations, you can see that he's awarded the penalty because Sterling is making contact with another player, an opposition player in the box, and is not paying any attention. I mean, he's 180 degrees turned around, not looking at the ball. And almost I think that is the kind of, you see fouls being given for aerial duels all over the pitch for that. And if Dean thinks that that's enough to award a penalty, then so be it. And I really don't think Ryan Shawcross should be encouraging referees not to give penalties as good fair plays and everything. I think at a stage where you're 2-0 down against one of the best teams in the Premier League, you need to take all the luck that comes your way.
I think Ryan Shawcross was having a pretty horrible afternoon all round. Not only does he play in a defence that concedes 4 goals, but he's also having this kind of despair at the state of the game, despair at the state of refereeing and like what's going on with this corner situation. A, why am I being unfairly targeted? And B, why are penalties getting awarded for seemingly next to nothing? There was also a penalty shout for Joe Allen in the first half. Do you think that the second penalty award might have been influenced by Dean not giving what looked like a stonewall penalty on Joe Allen first half?
Yes, I think so. But I think Mike's been shown it at half time in his dressing room. He's got Sky go up and think, oh my goodness, I've fluffed it again, and he's going to have to make up for it because he's obviously looking to give a penalty to Stoke. Like, he was eagle-eyed on the sort of Sterling challenge quotation marks. But yeah, that was another great moment for Allen. Quickly, just on that bit where he did get his foot onto the ball, and who was it that hacked him down? Was it Kolarov from behind? Just smacks his leg.
I think it was Zabaleta.
Anyway, whoever it was, it's just in that situation. I don't think many other players for Stoke would have got into that position where he could have been fouled. Just the sort of that agility that Joe Allen clearly has to get the ball and get his foot in front of it. He created that penalty, so another sort of I don't know, feather to his cap. Absolutely.
We saw Ramadan Sobhi introduced with 5 minutes to go in the game, much to the delight of the Egyptian fans on the Stoke Facebook page. I know we had this discussion with Joe Allen last week, having only played a short amount of minutes, but what did you make of the time he had on the pitch?
It was nice and exciting. I think it's good to see someone sort of coming off the bench who isn't a John Walters-y type player who you know exactly what you're going to get and he will just sort of come on and fill in the role. It was nice to see Sobhi, and his highlight of the game had to be that coming inside in an almost Arnautovic-like manner and a bit of a back heel and some trickery to link the play up nicely. It was promising, and hopefully we aren't now going to get bombarded in the comments by Egyptian fans.
I just wish he got a bit longer, to be honest. I think the game needed him maybe 5-10 minutes before he got subbed on, and then he would have had a real chance to make an impact on the game. Because you did mention it, I think the moment for me of Sobhi was that one touch sort of back heel pass he did, which sort of created an opening straight away, which we don't really normally see. We're very stale in possession sometimes, where Sobhi came on, did that one touch pass, and immediately you see a bit of space opening up for us. So I'm really interested to see how he performs in the next few weeks, or whenever he gets his chance, really.
Okay, just before we wrap up the discussion of this game, we've got a tweet from @MerryM_N on Twitter, who asks, if Diouf's the answer, then what is the question? Another sort of struggle for Diouf up front yesterday, I think it's fair to say. How much of that do you kind of put down to him having a bad game, and how much do you put down to, once again, a sort of lack of creativity leading to chances?
I'd put it mainly down to Diouf's performance. I think much different to the Middlesbrough game, where Diouf wasn't getting much service at all. He seemed to just not have the ability to touch the ball away, because we know, looking at that Man City team, if you're going to go right positions where I'm not too sure of quality, for me it'd be the two centre-backs. I mean, Otamendi's had his problems, and John Stones was dropped by Everton last year. They're both defenders who are fragile, and Diouf, every time he got the ball, it would sort of be a poor touch. Even in the lead up to the corner, where we got the penalty, Diouf's played a nice ball through the channel, and he runs onto it, has a poor touch, and is left really only with the option of shooting on his left foot, and all he can do is win the corner. I don't think he's clinical or technical enough to be leading that line in the system we play.
I think it's nice that Hughes is giving me, I'd love a chance at number 9, giving him the second chance in a row, because that's what we lacked. We lacked sort of giving a striker a run a game. So I think he did have a poor game. I think you said, David, on Twitter that sort of Middlesbrough was forgivable, but this was probably a poor performance. But I don't think that necessarily means that we should drop him. I think he should be given a few more chances. But another mention for Joselu. I mean, Joselu, more like. Where is he? Like,
where is he?
No one knows about Joselu. He's been here for a year and a bit, and I don't think many Stoke fans could really say the type of striker he is. He hasn't been given his chance. So, yeah, we'll get onto that in a bit. But I wanted to get a chance at Stevenage. But yeah, anyway.
Okay, we'll leave it there for the first half. Join us after the break. Welcome back to part 2 of the Wizards of Drivel podcast. With the Man City game firmly out of the way, the Stoke faithful should look forward to a win, hopefully, at some point this week. First of all, we've got an away trip at Stevenage in the EFL Cup. League Cup is always a competition that we haven't really taken too seriously in the first few rounds. I was at Luton Town last season, and I'd like to erase that from my memory as quickly as possible. But Ben, what kind of team do you hope to see at Stevenage?
Well, as I alluded to, I'd love to see Joselu at least in the squad. I mean, unless he sort of disappeared completely off the face of the earth. I think we mentioned again in the podcast last week, it'd be lovely to see a Joel Taylor if he is fit. I'm not sure if I saw a few sort of smatterings of people saying he might not be fit, but Joel Taylor at left back is sort of a development that I would like to see and see how it went. And other than that, I'm not too fussed. I would like to see a decent performance from us against Stevenage. As you mentioned, I was at the Luton game last year as well, and I think we were kind of in a similar position where we hadn't had a good performance yet in the league, and everyone was sort of went into the Luton game thinking, oh, it'll be fine. We're playing Luton. Luton are awful. We'll smash them, and it was probably one of the worst games of football I've ever seen, except for the penalty shootout at the end, which was quite fun. But hopefully we won't be seeing that on Tuesday. But yeah, other than that, I'm not too fussed. I think Joel Taylor and Joselu would be lovely, and then whatever sort of, and no Crouch actually. That's a big thing for me.
Yeah, I reflect on that. I was having a conversation earlier with Chris on Twitter about not wanting to see Crouch at all because I'm not sure what he brings, and we know that if we're playing against a team who are pressing as high and we just need to be getting that ball forward, then of course you can use Crouch. But I'd much rather see sort of one of the youth players, maybe an Ngoy probably is the most likely one to be picked. It'd be much nicer to see a young striker come up, especially with the issue we have at strikers at the minute. Hopefully, if we can get someone to come forward from the academy, that would be something really nice.
Now, yeah, I'd agree. There's not many teams kind of worse than Stevenage in the league. They're currently 20th in League Two. They did just beat the aforementioned Luton Town 2-1. That was their first win of the season. So I think if it was a Championship team or a like high-flying League One team, I'd maybe be a bit more cautious and play a few more sort of established names, if you like. But at the risk of sounding stupid and having egg on my face, it is Stevenage, and I think there's definitely room for the likes of Taylor or Ngoy to feature. Then on Saturday, we travel to Goodison Park to play Everton. Everton, who've just recorded a 2-1 victory over Tony Pulis' West Brom. They're looking decent at the start of this season under Ronald Koeman. Are we worried?
Yeah, probably. I will be next Saturday after we get knocked out in the League Cup, thanks to your sort of glowing review of how things are going to go on Tuesday. I'm sure we're going to get knocked out now. But yeah, they do look decent. I think they were going to look decent with Koeman at the top. Signing Balassi sort of is a decent signing. I know he sort of hasn't done too much in terms of stats, and I'm not his biggest fan anyway. But I'm sure he'll do bits for Everton. But yeah, we go into that game probably kind of needing a result, which is a dangerous position to be in, because if we don't get the result, then heads will drop, and next week's podcast will be even more depressing to listen to. So I don't want to say this is a must-win game or whatever, because it is Everton away, and that is a very difficult fixture to go into. But what I would like to see, which is probably something that I'll be screaming for the entire season, is just a good performance. Creating some chances, solid at the back, and then we'll see what happens. If we end up losing it like 1-0 or 2-1, then that's absolutely fine. But as long as we get a good showing in and show and sort of reach our potential, it is there. We all know it's there somewhere, but it just never happens. So if we see a good performance, I'll be happy.
I think it's one of those things now that we are all conditioned after the years under Pulis ball that we need to think, right, away games, no chance, this isn't going to be very good. We're petrified of them. But realistically, the Premier League is now turning towards a league where away wins are becoming a lot more likely than home wins, especially in two teams like us and Everton, who are very level, and we can almost just take the role of the counter-attacking side. Plus, as well, we've got Butland, Johnson, and Shaqiri all to return. That all seems pretty likely, provided there's no injuries midweek. That's something that we're going to be getting nearer and nearer that full-strength first team, and hopefully we can have a performance similar to the one that we had last year at Everton, because that would be a fantastic repeat.
You mentioned the signing of Yannick Balassi there, Ben. Everton, I think one of their main strengths is a really sort of pacey, creative attacking midfield, like Man City demonstrated yesterday, although not to the same extent. They've got players like Kevin Morales, they've got players like Ross Barkley and Balassi who can really hurt a team with their sort of quick passing and pace. Are you worried about our defence holding up to that?
Again, probably yes. Philip Woolshide, obviously not renowned for his pace. And as I mentioned earlier on in the podcast, Shawcross has looked very, very slow at the start of the season and at the end of last season when he came back from injury. So I guess that's exactly what we don't want to face in this situation where we haven't got a win from the first two games. But I guess all that means is that Mark Hughes is going to have to prepare for that. He knows what Everton have. We know what Everton have going forward. So I'm guessing we'll need to maybe sit 5-10 yards back. Don't dive into challenges like I know, well, especially Eric Peters has been guilty of numerous times. So yeah, having a bit of composure at the back, which is something we've been lacking for a while, but something that I'm guessing is going to be vital if we're going to get anything from this game.
There's been some debate about the role of Gianelli and Bula. He played further forward yesterday with Allen and Whelan sitting behind with Juve up top. Is that something is that an experiment you'd like to see continue, or would you rather Imbula slot back into that midfield too? And if so, what would your midfield look like?
I think I'd probably not play Imbula sort of as that almost, I don't know, what should we call it, like a false number 10 role. Dropping back to a centre midfield 2 with Joe Allen and get Bojan moved inside, because I think for as defensively vulnerable as that might make us, I don't think Glenn Whelan's had a brilliant start to the season. And I think with Joe Allen's work rate, you have actually got somebody who will drop back and try and win the ball in that area where Whelan normally operates. And Bojan out wide against Man City was it's clearly something that's never worked for him. He was tried out wide at Roma, at Ajax, and he totally struggled with it. We need to get Bojan back in the middle, because that's where we're going to get the most from him, and he's such a pivotal player that if we can get the best from him, we are going to be a seriously strong side.
Yeah, I think Imbula's sort of the best aspect of Imbula's play as well is that taking the ball from defence to attack, those sort of mazy runs and getting past players, which he's going to struggle to do in the behind the striker role that he was playing on Saturday. I don't think it's like an awful role for him, really. I think he could do it. He's definitely got the capability. But when, as you say, you've got Whelan there who is looking tired. I mean, I love Glenn Whelan. I think he's been so good for us, and it does sort of break my heart to see him sort of struggling in the midfield. But he's just not the same player as he was. And I know for a long, long time he has improved himself year on year to suit the role that we need him to be in. But this year, I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's 1 year too far. So, yeah, as I mentioned again, Allen is the midfielder that can do anything, seemingly, off his first performance. So let's try Allen and Imbula in a midfield too. There's certainly players that can do everything that a midfielder a centre midfielder is expected to do. All the chat will be about Paul Pogba for the next few weeks, but in my eyes, it's all about Joe Allen. He is a complete central midfielder, and if he can play alongside Imbula in that role, I think it could work.
Yeah, I really think we should have made a bigger deal of the Joe Allen signing. Maybe have a video with Stormzy and Adidas adverts and all the rest of it.
Maybe get a chicken in there.
We need to cash in on that chicken and egg sponsorship money.
Definitely.
We mentioned there about sort of the lack of pace in the defence and just kind of the worries at the back in general. One player who we've been tentatively linked with recently is Phil Jones. Is that a signing that excites you?
I mean, he doesn't fit in with the current aesthetic of the squad. I mean, he's certainly not good looking enough to play for Stoke City at the minute. But as a player, sort of, I have always been, I don't know why, I think it's probably because I'm angry that Ryan Shawcross never gets picked for England. I've always thought he wasn't a very good player, but then if you look back at his stats and sort of some of the Man United defences he's played in, there's really strong defences there. I think the only question that probably lingers over that transfer, if it does go through, is does he come in for Philip Woolshide, or if we go on form, he's probably going to come in for Ryan Shawcross, which would be sort of something you can't see any manager doing, dropping a captain of a club who's been our captain for what now, 7 or 8 years. Yeah.
I'm really not sure on Phil Jones. I think he's a player that has got a lot of hype over nothing, a sort of Balassi of centre back. For the first reason why when I saw it, I was sort of like, not sure, is his injury record. We've got a squad that's already sort of getting injuries every other minute. So adding another player that has sort of had a career that's been completely affected by his injuries, it's a risk that I'm not sure we should be in a position to take. Obviously, if it's a loan move, then that might be a bit better. But when we need a sort of centre back to come in and replace someone, I don't know about Phil Jones. Another thing is that he's a centre back that plays in different positions, and that's another thing that I know a lot of people like. They like that that sort of they can fill more roles than one, but I think that sort of affects his ability to do his best role. So I'm guessing his sort of preferred role is centre back. but he's not developed as the sort of amazing centre back he was destined to be almost. I think Alex Ferguson was saying he's one of the best players that he sort of had in his youth system, or he signed. Sorry, because he signed him from Blackburn, didn't he? But yeah, he hasn't sort of reached that potential. So is he any good, or is it all just hype like Yannick Bolasie? I don't know. We'll see if we sign him.
Well, the positions that sort of most of the Stoke fans on Radio Stoke were kind of crying out for were centre back and centre forward. I know you guys have written stuff for Bear Pit in the past saying we don't really kind of need a new centre back. I think Tom, did you write an article to that effect? Based on the first two games, do you stand by that?
I'm not desperately sure because I look at I think my point still stands. I mean, Philip Woolshide's had a good start to the season, and I think he's beginning to prove his doubters wrong. If not, some people have got a bit too excited about his performances. And I think the matter is, it all comes down to, does Ryan Shawcross reclaim the form we've seen him have and become that defensive stalwart once more? Because if we can get that back, then I'd say 100% no. We've got young defenders in Muniz and experienced centre-backs like Jeff Cameron. We don't need another one. But if Shawcross can't reclaim that, then it'll become a black hole within a squad that no one can fill until we've signed a seriously good quality centre-back.
It could be heartbreaking for Shawcross, really, if he never does get that form back. This is the season where he could eventually get some England starts under his belt, but if he's in this like desperately bad form that he seems to be in at the moment, then he's never going to get a chance, which is it breaks my heart. It really does. What a shame.
Yeah, we'll kind of just have to hope that Shawcross just kind of I don't know, just a few hours in the training ground or just some rest time can sort of pay off. Because I don't know about you, but I think the kind of worst goal for us to concede yesterday was, in my opinion, maybe not the second goal, maybe it was the third goal where Man City sprung a sort of attack on us. I think someone dispossessed Allen, and then Shawcross was kind of just stood motionless while an easy ball was played through. Are you confident that Shawcross can come back, or are you still kind of really not sure and just hoping?
Yeah, it's definitely just hope now. I think it's sort of the same thing as Ben said. Sort of, I don't think my heart could take Ryan Shawcross not being able to sort of walk into that Sam Allardyce England side because he's struggling so much to play at home. Although maybe it's just the standard Mark Hughes, we're still basically in pre-season, we need 5 or 6 games to really get into our form. But that, to me, with Shawcross's current performances, just doesn't seem to be the case, and he does seem to have almost totally lost it. But yeah, I can only hope that he can come back.
The thing I wonder about Ryan Shawcross is that he is exactly the type of player that if he had a little knock on his back or he had some pain, he would just continue to play. He wouldn't say anything if it didn't really stop him from playing. So I wonder if there's something there that is hurting him, or something that's affecting him. If it's not just his fitness, which it did seem yesterday that it was, that he lacks some real match fitness, then maybe it's like carrying a knock or something and he's not telling anyone. But that's to the detriment of the team. So yeah, it's a bit of an out there theory. Probably nothing. There's no truth in it, but it was just something I wondered this morning.
Yeah. On the centre forward issue, then the Saido Berahino saga it kind of won't go away. But I think increasingly it looks like Berahino probably will stay at the Hawthorns. How do you feel about that in general? Are you frustrated that we can't seem to get our man, or are you kind of relieved? Is Berahino someone you wanted anyway? Do we need a striker, or do we just need to improve our sort of creating chances rather than the guy who finishes them? There's a lot of questions in that one, in that one question, but the overall sort of question is, do we need Berahino?
I really like the look of Saido Berahino because he's that sort of striker who will, almost in an Aguero fashion, and I'm not calling Saido Berahino Aguero, he's definitely not that good and will never be
I think that's exactly what you're saying. You're saying Berahino, you've called him the English Aguero in the past. So.
Aguero.
He drops back and links up with the player and then bursts through that defence and finds the net. But the one thing I'm finding really confusing is sort of how this transfer seems to be stopping and never going to happen. And a few weeks ago now, it must have been, there was an interview with Scholes on Stoke's YouTube channel talking about how transfers are done. And he talked about how, we don't always just pursue one target. Well, it seems with this striker that our only target is Saido Berahino, because there is a decent abundance of strikers sort of around the Premier League who'd come in and could do a job for us, maybe if it's even for one season, sort of a Wilfred Bonney or a Loic Remy. But we just seem to have no links with them whatsoever, and it seems to be Berahino or no one else.
That was exactly my point as well. That was what I was going to say. It's a weird one, because obviously I wrote an article a few weeks ago saying that Stoke don't need any more players after signing Solby Allen and re-signing Arnautovic. But my issue with this is, as you say, Tom, we're not being linked with anyone else, which doesn't mean that we're not sort of going for anyone else. But if Hughes has denoted that the centre forward role is somewhere that we need to improve, and we're only going for one player, like, why is that? Why are we not sort of looking elsewhere? If the Berahino thing is stalling so much, why are we just concentrating on him rather than looking for another striker? That confuses me and slightly worries me, that if there is a position that we need to strengthen, why aren't we strengthening it?
I wish I could answer that question, but we're running out of time. Before we sort of wrap up, shall we have some predictions for, first of all, Stevenage and then Everton?
Stevenage, I'd say probably like 2-0 Stoke, sort of a nice, comfortable, maybe not the best performance, but hopefully a decent win. And Everton maybe stealing it 2-1 with a late Arnautovic screamer.
I'm going to say for the Stevenage game 4-1 to us. I think we need a 4-1 after what we witnessed on Saturday. And I just saw this morning that the Stevenage striker is in the League 2 Team of the Week, so they're inevitably going to get a goal from him. And Everton, it's going to be 2-2. There's going to be goals again because we just can't defend. And I'm going to say that we're going to score 2 because I really want us to score 2.
Nothing like blind optimism then.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think we'll see off Stevenage. I'd really like it not to go to extra time. I'd just love us to just do a professional job. Just get rid of those memories from Luton where they took us all the way to that penalty shootout. So I'm going to say 3-0. I'll go for a 3-0. Maybe Ngoy coming off the bench and scoring, hopefully. Everton. This is one of those games that for me, any result that you suggest could happen. Like they could win 3-0, we could win 3-0, that kind of thing. I'm gonna continue with this sort of theme of optimism because on the back of a 4-1 defeat, you kind of need some optimism. So I'm going to say we're going to win 3-2, and Arnautovic is going to score a hat trick, just to annoy all the Everton fans who sort of said they didn't need him.
Right, get him in your fantasy teams then, lads.
Captain him.
Yeah, making your captain. That's my big fancy football tip for this week. Arnautovic, absolutely put him as triple captain, particularly if you're in one of my leagues. Before we go, I'll just plug the wizardsofdribble.com. That we've put up 2 pieces on there recently. There's a great article from Sam who's written about Juif's performance against Borough. If you think Juif had a bad game against Middlesbrough, you'd maybe want to think again. There's some excellent GIFs in... Is it GIFs or GIFs? It doesn't matter. There's some excellent GIFs in there about the kind of movement he made, and maybe our more creative players let him down. And also there's something from Jason about potential academy breakthrough players, looking at the likes of Dominic Telford, Joel Taylor, and Julian Ngoy. #deploy Ngoy. Lads, is there anything you'd like to plug?
Well, I guess as always, you can listen to my new podcast now, Rival podcast that covers the bad, the ugly, and the boring of modern football. It's called Left Back in the Studio, so you can search for it on iTunes or follow it at LB in the Studio and have a listen. Give us a follow. Let us know what you think.
And I've got a blog that should be going up later today, maybe tomorrow. That will, if you think Eric Piers isn't good enough for Stoke City, you are just wrong, and you need to read that blog to find out why.
Excellent. Myself, I've got something on the Shoot magazine website, shoot.co.uk, talking about Gianelli and Bueller and how he's the best footballer on the face of the earth. If you want to get in touch with either of us individually, I am at David Cowlishaw on Twitter. Ben, you are?
BAJ Cartwright.
And Tom?
At Sussex Stokey.
If you want to give any suggestions or any feedback, or if you've got any questions about the show, you can tweet us at Wizards of Drivel on Twitter. Really do get involved and spread the word if this is something you're enjoying, because as always, we want to reach as many Stoke fans as possible. Create a debate and obviously boost those SoundCloud figures. That's it from us. Thanks for listening. Go on, Stoke.